The following program deals with mature subject matter and may not be suitable for younger audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's no secret that pornography can be found on the internet. In fact, some people would claim that pornography has taken over the internet, and that's perhaps where we can find some different perspectives. And so today we wonder, where do you draw the line when it comes to pornography? And so we begin on the streets.
When it gets to stuff that's like where someone's getting hurt or where it seems like someone's getting hurt, then I guess that's like where you shouldn't really be showing that, or you shouldn't really have that online or at all.
The actual intercourse, when you actually see the actual deed being done, is when pornography. I don't take the R rating, the toplessness, and that. It's just everyday stuff, pretty much on television. So
when it's available to young adults and children.
Violence and children, I don't think it should be part of it at all whatsoever.
I just think that like in media in general, like everything kind of like resorts to sex now, or sexual appeal. Like everything just kind of leads to anything to do with sex, just because it like appeals to the public. So I think that's what captures everyone's attention.
I mean, there's some of the ads you see nowadays, could be considered pornographic. I mean, they have these chicks in tiny little, bikini tops covered in water, and they're selling like coffee or something.
So those were some people on the streets of Toronto answering the question where they draw the line or how they define pornography. Now joining me now in the studio is someone who has a very clear line. That's where you're here, Robert Borys. He's a teacher with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. Yep. He's also the author of a little booklet called Love, Marriage, and Pornography. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much.
So where do you draw the pornography line?
Well, in some ways, I think it's fairly clear. Anytime there are images that are explicit, exploitive, and degrading, and when the people shown as sex objects, devoid of relationships, you're almost focusing on body parts. It's out of context. There's not an intimate relationship there.
Okay.
Then I think you would probably be fairly safe in seeing that is pornographic.
So that's how you would define it. If it's explicit, degrading,
and exploitive,
and maybe some of those are clearer than others, because I know we were speaking about earlier. If you go see a film, I mean, it's pornography.
Sure.
But if I go see a film and there's maybe a lovemaking scene, and it is a husband and wife, maybe my line is different than somebody else's. Could that be seen as? I mean, people talk about soft porn, but what is that?
Sure, and then people say, it's an artistic expression, it's just romantic erotica.
Yeah,
but again, I think, is there a context? Is there a relationship there?
Okay.
Is it gratuitous?
Okay, so is it necessary to advance the plot of the story, or isn't it? In the same way that you might see some of that in advertising.
Yes.
I think about, that maybe pornography is one thing, and I might be very good at avoiding it, but every time I walk down the street, Yonge and Dundas or wherever, Times Square in New York, and all these billboards and ads and advertising jeans or whatever, and it's, So is it gratuitous? Is it there just to make you look?
Well, they say sex sells.
It's true.
And certainly...
It makes you look.
Yeah, it gets your attention.
Okay, so would you say that then, if we are talking about graphic images or explicit images, is there a line there where you'd say, like, what is too graphic or what is too explicit? Or, like, how do you draw that line?
Well, I think it's within context. It's in the context.
So
I mean, if someone looks specifically for pornography on the internet or whatever, we're talking about movies, films, and images that may come up, scenes that may be shot there, that can be more subjective. Again, then you're looking, is it gratuitous, is it exploitive, that kind of thing.
Okay, so the context, I think that's maybe an important point. Now, how prevalent is it? Because, if I'm looking for it, I'm sure I'll find it, but I've never, maybe once or twice, I've stumbled upon it, or I certainly don't get pop-ups. I have all the right filters. So is it really that prevalent on the internet?
It's widespread. Many people would say it's epidemic proportions. You may not see it yourself. I'm a teacher. There's a teacher interview we have always with parents.
Yeah.
I was speaking to a friend of mine and asked him how the interviews went, and he said he had one mother in, and he was telling the mother he's having trouble, the student is not submitting homework, etc. And she says, yeah, I know, I can't get him off the porn at night. He's on the computer all night watching porn, and then he gets viruses, so he can't print it out. The printer doesn't work, and this is just commonplace. And friends have asked me, because I'm sort of involved in this area, friends have asked me to come and see what's wrong with their computer and check it out. And inevitably, and anytime you're talking about a young adolescent boy, male,
right.
I find all kinds of stuff on there.
Okay.
And so I think that this is
so
big
prevalence.
issue.
I was thinking prevalence in terms of how much of it can you find on the internet, but you're talking about prevalence of how common it is for, I mean, in this particular case, adolescents, but
Sure.
for people to be consuming pornography.
Yeah, basically it's one mouse click away. If someone wants to look for it, they can find it. Just type in anything in a search engine,
Yeah.
click, and you've got it. Now, we used to have more problem with pop-ups.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
that doesn't
being
exist.
reduced
Yeah.
just because of the different search engines and filters that are on there.
Now, and in terms of because experts talk about pornography as addiction. That is your experience, that like that young man that can't do his homework because he can't stop watching it because he's addicted. It's
Well, the people have called internet pornography the crack cocaine of sexual addiction. It's like a real addiction that we would associate with alcohol or drugs, and yet in some ways it's even more harmful because those things you can finally get out of your system.
right.
Whereas the
images,
pornography,
yeah.
what they say is that in 0.3 of a second, the image goes from your eyes to your brain, and if it's an arousing or intense image that makes an impact, your brain actually alters and imprints and triggers an involuntary,
seared, yeah.
instant, and long-lasting, even permanent memory trail.
Yeah, yeah. Now, and is there? Because I've also heard about ideas where it alters the pathways in the
Yes,
brain.
yes.
In terms of not just having that image, but in terms of the relationship between the image and the physical response. Is that so? So there's
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, and then what happens is there's a lot of very good research out there as people become desensitized to that. So what aroused a person, turned them on, at this stage, after a while, it doesn't do it anymore. They need a higher hit. They need to see something more bizarre, more explicit, more jarring to get that same feeling. And so it goes that desensitization and escalates until ultimately it can come into acting out.
right.
And in fact, there's some very strong evidence of the link between viewing regular, what we call regular pornography, and finally going over that line into child pornography.
So, for people who maybe their bar is maybe a little lower, and they're not watching pornography, but they're okay with some of the advertising or some of the programs on TV, that some people would say it's on the verge of, or soft porn, that they are in danger of escalating because because those images can be just as harmful, even though maybe they're not as graphic or as explicit.
And it depends on the personality. Some people have maybe more addictive personality. Some people, certain things may trigger someone, and so it could lead them to search out more graphic, more explicit images and particular pornography.
Right. Let me read you a comment that came in from one of our viewers on Facebook. So this came in from Marie Van Gompel Alsbergas. She's in Maryland, and she writes, "The X-rated material is out there and can easily sneak up on the internet. Try entering a search for a specific baby animal, and some suggestive picture will turn up unless you have an adult content filter. My measure is to make it personal. Would I be embarrassed if my boss, mother, or children saw me in that pose, or if I saw them in that pose?" So she has a very clear definition as to what is not okay,
Sure,
and what is
sure.
okay by making it personal. Is that a good strategy?
It is very good. It's sort of like thinking, well, if my mother was here, my wife was here, my sister, my kids, and they're over my shoulder looking, is this something I'd want them seeing me doing on the internet, searching on the internet?
Right.
Or even TV shows type of thing.
Right. Like, and I was just, again, we were talking about this earlier, watching one of these movies, not these movies because it wasn't porn, but a movie in an airplane. And there's a very suggestive scene, and I'm thinking, personal screen, but everybody that's sitting behind me can actually see what I'm watching. And I didn't want them seeing me watching this, and actually I didn't even want to watch it myself, so I turned it off. But I thought, that's, again, do I want people knowing that I'm watching this kind of thing? What about people who would say, well, I don't mind if my husband or my wife, maybe a guy, I don't mind it if my wife does these kinds of things with me because it's going to help our marriage, so then it's okay for me to watch it. Is that a common?
Well, there is certainly some of that goes on, and it's sort of I think guys in particular may be more interested in that or open to that, but there's some strong research that shows that once you go down that path, it really is harmful to the relationship.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a little break right now, but don't go anywhere. It's a short break. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion. In particular, we're going to look at some of the specific physical and spiritual harms of pornography and also how we can protect ourselves. So don't go anywhere.
Let us know your perspective. Email us at perspectives@saltandlighttv.org or reach us by mail, Perspectives at Salt and Light Television, 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, or call us toll-free at 1-888-302-7181. Let your perspective be heard.
Just confident in telling your kids what it is. Maybe give them a couple stories or stuff that you actually went through yourself and that.
I think it all starts at home in educating them and talking about sex.
Just monitoring like what they do and just watching when they're on the internet instead of just like letting them go off and do whatever they want on the computer.
Or you gotta, use the parent safe searches on their computers to lock out those kinds of sites. I mean, like some 6-year-old researching a school project and end up bringing up like 10 different porn websites out of nowhere,
I'd keep my computer in like a public area in the house. I wouldn't keep it in like a private room, kind of leave it like in a hallway or like in our living room where I can see what they're doing.
Again, some people on the streets in Toronto commenting on how they would protect themselves against the threat of online pornography. The main comment being, I think one of the most obvious ones, is don't have a computer in a dark room in the basement, or don't give your kids their own computer in their room. Put it in a public place. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before that, I'd like to continue talking a bit about sort of the effects or the harm, because, and I keep thinking about that story about that parent whose son can't stop watching it, and the parent seems unable to do anything, or maybe she thinks that it's okay, that this is normal for an adolescent young man to be watching. What do we need to tell that parent so that she pulls the plug?
Well, I think, ultimately that you are the parent. Probably she purchased the computer. It's the family's computer. And even if it is, the son bought the computer himself, you're asking for a lot of problem. The harmful effects of pornography are well documented on adults. They haven't done direct research on harmful effects on children and adolescents because it's illegal and immoral, right, under 18.
Well, talk to me about the harm for an adult, because I would think that adolescents, where their brains are still developing, they're still developing emotionally and sexually.
Yes.
Probably the effects would be worse.
Well, they are. They're developing their attitudes, behaviors, values, views, beliefs. And so when they're exposed to negative images of relationships, of love, and what you see in pornography, it's going to have even more detrimental effects.
One of the things that I hear, and actually I tell people, is like, well, what you're seeing there is not real. So you might have an idea that this is what lovemaking looks like, but it's not real. Is that
very, very definitely. Viewing pornography causes distorted perceptions of sexuality and reality. In fact, men they have diminished sexual arousal, which you would think, wait a minute, they should have more heightened. No, it's because they are used to this and they need a bigger boost, something, and maybe normal lovemaking with their spouse just doesn't do what they saw, some bizarre thing going on with these sex nymphomaniacs, which may have been shot over a 3-hour period. Right. But it's all pieced together and look like this is a 20-minute episode.
Yeah. So would you say, I know that maybe you're not the expert in this area, but would you say that maybe if there is an epidemic of erectile dysfunction, or that there's a correlation maybe with this porn addiction?
Interesting.
Yeah,
I've not looked at it, but
well,
that's an
maybe
interesting
there's
question.
a correlation there. So it affects how we view relationships, healthy relationships, love relationships. How can it affect a marriage? I mean, you hear about marriages breaking up because of pornography.
Oh, yes. I know several personally that are struggling with it. Basically, pornography strips sex of its natural relationship to love, to marriage, to procreation. And it replaces it with just pure physical, selfish act. And so what that does, that destroys a marriage. Marriage should be built, it takes love and replaces it with lust. All those values that hold a marriage together, it devalues. Children are not wanted. Children in pornography, the world of pornography, unless you're into child pornography, but children are a distraction. Yeah. Children are a problem. And so if this is ingrained in a mindset, you can see how damaging that would be for a marriage, for a family, for that love relationship.
So any couple that is maybe been told that they have to watch pornography together because that's going to help them in their sex life, that's not a good idea.
No. It's going to create artificial, unreal expectations, unreal ideas and images. These are not normal people. Normal people have pimples and bad days and bad breath, and all these people in pornography are the perfect images.
Now, do you, of the people that you know that the marriages have been destroyed or that marriages are broken, is it common where the husband might be addicted to pornography online and the woman feels betrayed? She feels that he's cheating on her.
Well, it really is. Viewing pornography is really an act of adultery, you could look at. Jesus said, everyone who looks at a woman with lust in his eyes commits adultery. Commits adultery in his heart.
Absolutely.
And so women, I think after a while, it's not like, oh, just get your jollies here and that'll satisfy you. But because this is so devoid of reality.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's where I, for example, maybe would say that the line can be drawn in different places, because I can see how advertising can cause that. Sure. In that you might see an ad and think, oh, that's an attractive woman, or that woman looks, or I'm looking at her in a certain way, and already I'm maybe committing adultery because I'm thinking about her a certain way. So it's a problem. So that wife whose husband is suffering, really struggling with that addiction, what do we tell that wife? We don't want the marriage to end, so should that wife leave him? Should that wife help him? What's one step that she...
Definitely. There's a lot of help that needs to be. If you're talking like a full-fledged addiction that someone has, that needs some serious intervention. Yeah. Counseling, prayer for protection, prayer for deliverance from that bondage to that.
Right. So, and other things that you can do other than putting the computer out in a public space so that he can't just be watching it on his own?
What I have come up with is a very simple idea, is that you use either two-sided tape or regular tape, and you affix to the monitor of the computer either a picture, it could be a saying or a few words, it could be a picture of your wife, your children, your parents, a holy picture, Jesus, the Sacred Heart, the Blessed Virgin. And so when you're going on there, this is looking at you. Now you can, if you want, you can rip that off and throw it away, and I'm going to look for what I want. But this is looking at you, reminding you of the loved ones you have.
Yeah.
Do you want to damage that love relationship? How would they feel if they're seeing you doing this?
That's great advice. Wow. You put together this book, so it's called Love, Marriage, and Pornography. And there's also this other booklet that I think they come as a package together, the Internet Awareness for Parents. If you're concerned about coming up with strategies as to how to safeguard your computers or find the right filters and all that information is in these booklets. A lot of what we've been talking about is in Love, Marriage, and Pornography. There's a website, ccaparents.com. You can find all the information there. You can also contact Robert directly. And you can find out how to purchase the two booklets for a presentation in your school or in your church or to find out more information. Robert, this has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. The conversation is going to end right now. It continues on Facebook, but we're going to conclude by reflecting on this Sunday's Gospel.
All right.
So this will be the 26th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and it's a reading from Matthew chapter 21. A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." He answered, "I will not." But later he changed his mind and went. The father went to the second and said the same. And he answered, "I am going, sir." But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? They said, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you did not change your minds and believe him." So that's a reading from Matthew chapter 21, verses 28 to 32. Any thoughts on that, Robert, on that reading?
Right away, it strikes me, it reminds me of another passage, I believe it's in Matthew. Jesus said, "It is not those who say, 'Lord, Lord,' who will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father." And so I think what we need to be, how do we know what his will is? Well, to listen to him, that involves prayer. I mean, what did Mary say right at the wedding feast of Cana? Do whatever he tells you. What does he tell us? Well, again, that involves knowing the scriptures, knowing the teachings of the church, knowing the faith, and listening in prayer, and then doing it. And we can have doing the right thing and avoid doing the wrong thing as well. Yeah. And that could tie into our topic of pornography.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Robert. It's been great.
You're welcome.
It's been a long time that we've been trying to get Robert here. But Robert Borys, he's a teacher with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board.
Right, yes.
He's also the author of these 2 great little booklets. And you can find him at the website ccaparents.com. If you missed any portion of the show, check out our website, saltandlighttv.org/perspectives. That's where we archive all our programs. And remember to visit us online at Facebook, facebook.saltandlighttv.org. That's where we post our question of the week. You know, we cannot do this show without your perspective. So that's all for tonight. We'll see you next week.